Okay, awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Just going to give a couple minutes here to let people log on. We're very excited to welcome Leela Stewart, a wonderful resource to talk a little bit about metabolic health and how it relates to yoga and the incredible benefits of yoga. Leela has a wonderful and extensive background, um, kind of spanning different realms from uh, sort of massage therapy, and obviously as a certified yoga therapist as well. And so we're going to get started in a few minutes. I think we have around 10 people or so currently, so we'll give it a couple more minutes here. Okay, maybe we'll get started here, and I'm sure people will kind of sign on as we continue. I'm just going to introduce a little bit about myself and a little bit about and then I'll pass it on to Leela. Give me 1 second here. Hey, so thank you again, everyone, for joining us. My name is Chris Colhane. I'm the Nutrition Operations Manager at Choices Market. And I'm very excited to welcome Leela back into our sort of Choices nutrition space. Leela's definitely quite well known in my circle and our circle of Choices, and we're so thrilled to have her join us again to help educate people around the incredible benefits of yoga and how it ties to metabolic health. And so Leela will certainly lean on her wealth of experience through different educational materials and programs that she does for her wonderful clients. First and foremost, I do want to do a land acknowledgement. I'm very grateful and privileged to join everyone from the Commercial Drive area, which is the traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands of the Cayuse, Umatilla, Walla Walla, Stolo, Hunkaminam Treaty Group, Tsawela-Tooth, Musqueam, Squamish, and Stamatis nations. As someone with Indigenous family, I'm always very grateful to be joining from and working and learning and living from such wonderful lands. I certainly love to fish and hunt, and I think we're very lucky here on the West Coast with such an abundance of great seafood and fish, root vegetables, lots of different berries and fruit and produce. And so I certainly welcome everyone to reflect on where they're joining us from today. So a little bit about Leela. As I mentioned, she is a retired RMT, or a registered massage therapist, and as well as a certified yoga therapist. Um, Leela Stewart is a certified yoga therapist, or CYAYT, former registered massage therapist, and a pioneer in movement education with decades of experience supporting whole person health. She founded one of Canada's first yoga therapy studios and created the Anatomy of Yoga Therapy, a 300-hour training program she taught for 15 years. Her work focuses on empowering individuals through awareness, gentle movement, and breath, helping them connect with their body's innate wisdom and apply it in practical, everyday ways to support lasting physical, mental, and emotional well-being. So maybe without further ado, I will pass it on to Leela.
Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for showing up tonight. In shorter words than what Chris just said, what I would say about myself is that I am very passionate about igniting people's enthusiasm for becoming active participants in their own healing process. So whether that's a musculoskeletal thing or metabolic health or headaches or backaches or digestive issues or whatever it is, these days there's some pretty good research on how yoga therapy can help. And there's a lot of research on how yoga can improve metabolic health. So lots of research on diabetes, on heart disease, yoga and heart disease, yoga. I mean, all of the markers of metabolic health. There's really good research on how yoga can help that. And so, what I'd like to do today is talk a little for about maybe half an hour, and I'll talk about what is metabolic health and then how yoga can affect that. But mostly, I want to spend time with you teaching you some tools that you can use on a daily basis and just some ideas that you might want to start incorporating into your daily life that can affect your metabolic health. And these days, like the statistics are crazy, like something like uh, above people above 60, like 2 out of 3 people have more than one of the metabolic health markers that are in a not very good place. And something like 70%, I can't quite remember the number, but have at least one of their metabolic markers in a not very good place. So it's systemic, it's cultural, it's societal, and it's getting worse. And that really concerns me. As a massage therapist, I noticed a trend that when people hit their for mid 40s around, mid 40s, early 50s, then that's when they would start showing up with cardiovascular disease, diabetes, um, irritable bowel syndrome, and cancer, like all these things. And now I understand why, because the research is telling us that the underlying cause of all of these, what are called diseases of modern life, is stress. Yeah, is chronic stress. And we are not designed to live in a state of chronic nervous system activation. And I'll get into all of that in a while. So I'm quite passionate about how yoga can, and yoga therapy, and I'll just distinguish yoga and yoga therapy. Um, Yoga, to become a yoga therapist takes about 5 times as much training as a regular yoga teacher, and a yoga therapist is trained to assess, to design a plan for someone according to that individual. So it's not like a class where everybody does the same thing, uh, and to modify that according to what's changing. So there's a very specialized educational pathway for yoga therapists that is much more encompassing than a regular yoga teacher. Not that a regular yoga teacher can't help you. Yeah, yes, that's very true. But if you've got something going on and you want a, a broader yogic perspective, then that's what a yoga therapist will do, because we work with the whole person. So it's not just about giving postures or giving some breath. It's about looking at you from the model of the koshas. And koshas are the different uh, layers of being human. So from the physical to the spiritual. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a while. But what I wanted to say about metabolic health is, first of all, what is metabolism? And metabolism is the way that the body generates, regulates, and sustains energy. Yeah. So so metabolic health is really about optimizing the health of our energy regulation. And what does that mean? That means how well do we process the food that we take in to convert that to energy? How well do we regulate hormones? How well do we maintain cellular balance? Like, we've got so many different kinds of cells in our body, and each one of them needs very specific levels of pH and hormones and chemicals and fluids, and that requires cellular signaling. And so the cells talk to each other. And so metabolic health means that there's good cellular signaling, that the cells are getting the right signals to do what they need to do. So in the case of metabolic health, we want to make sure that the pancreatic cells are producing insulin, that the insulin is produced at the right times, at the right rates, in the right amounts, and that insulin then works on the receptors on every single cell in your body, right? Every single cell in your body has an insulin receptor. And so what the insulin does is it gets onto the receptor, and then a little gateway opens, and the glucose that's in your blood after you eat goes into the cells. Yeah, so that's the way it's supposed to work. And the cellular signaling is also telling those receptors to open or close when necessary, to open when there's lots of glucose and to close when there's not so much glucose. Yeah. So, so that's cellular signaling. Uh, Metabolic health is also about how well your body manages inflammation, right? And chronic stress produces excessive and systemic inflammation. And it seems to be that the research is showing that pretty well all of those diseases are a result of chronic systemic inflammation. So we want to be able to control that. Um, yeah, so that's what I want to say about what metabolic health is. And you've probably had other people talk about metabolic health, so I'm not going to talk too much about the measures, but how we measure metabolic health. You go to your doctor, you get some tests. The tests are your triglycerides, your blood glucose levels, your the HDL, the good cholesterol, um, also your blood pressure and your waist circumference, because waist circumference seems to be a better marker than body mass in BMI, body mass index. So, for example, men, waist circumference of over 40 inches is considered to be, not so great, because what that indicates is too much fat around the organs in that area. So that's how it's assessed. And metabolic syndrome is considered a systemic condition which starts with some of these things, with inflammation, with poor digestion, with lack of sleep, and all of that kind of stuff. And and then it ends up, the end result is metabolic syndrome. And metabolic syndrome is a whole group of conditions that include high blood pressure, diabetes, polycystic ovarian uh, um, but now it's just been renamed, and I can't remember what it was. Just this week, it was renamed to, I think, something about metabolism, because it seems like it's got much more to do with metabolism than just the reproductive system. So all these different cancer, even, yeah, dementia, Alzheimer's is considered to be type 3 diabetes, right? So all of these stem from uh, the root source, which is stress. And when we the so the different factors that can come into play are our diet. I know that you've had talks about this, but particularly eating too often, eating highly processed foods and foods that have and more sugar than is probably good for us. Yeah. So sugar, also lack of exercise. Yeah, lack of exercise. So being sedentary is a risk factor for metabolic syndrome. And part of the reason for that is that when we are moving and using our big muscles, then that's a signal for those receptors. Well, there's two ways that for the receptors to open up so that glucose can go in and feed those muscle cells. But there's a non-glucose mediated pathway when you exercise those big muscles. The um, those the glucose automatically is uptaken by the cells. Yeah. So if you're not moving, then you're not getting glucose into your cells as much as it probably needs. Other factors are poor sleep. Yeah. Um, Irregular patterns. So irregular sleep, irregular eating, irregular exercise, irregular work. So your body really likes regularity. It really likes routine. And if you're getting up and going to bed at different times, then your circadian rhythms get kind of mixed up. Yeah. And having circadian rhythms that are in a smooth and regular rhythm can help your metabolic health. Yeah. Um, uh, Nervous system regulation is another thing. So I'll definitely talk a lot about this, because when we are under this continual stress, our sympathetic nervous system is ramped up. Yeah. And when it is ramped up, we have a whole cascade of changes in our body, because we're getting ready to fight or run, right? And so we don't need to be digesting when we are fighting or running. So digestion decreases. Our immune system, it bumps up immediately because we don't, but it kind of down regulates because we don't really need to be fighting anything, any viruses when we're running. Yeah. So immune system goes down, digestion goes down, blood. So the whole pathway is called the HPA axis, the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal gland. So the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland register the danger signal, send signals to the adrenal glands to produce cortisol and adrenaline, those stress hormones. And it's those stress hormones that cause the whole cascade of events that I've mentioned. So when we need to fight or flee, we need lots of glucose to do that, because glucose is what feeds our muscles, right? So a whole bunch of glucose is released into the blood. That's swimming around and feeding our muscles. The problem is when the stress is chronic and all of that glucose is floating around and all that cortisol is floating around, then what happens is the that the receptors, the insulin receptors, get kind of mixed up and they start shutting down. So this is chronically, right? So there's all this glucose floating around in the blood, but it's not getting into the cells. But the cells go, oh, I'm not getting enough glucose, so I better signal I better signal that I need more insulin produced so that it'll take more glucose into the cells. But it becomes a vicious cycle. So, so the one of the main physical states of metabolic um, disorder is that there's too much insulin in the blood, and of course too much glucose. Not enough is getting into the cells, and that it's called hyperinsulinemia, right? Hyperinsulinemia, too much insulin. Then that creates a whole cascade of events that includes inflammation and all of the blood pressure dysregulation and all of the things that happen in metabolic syndrome. So so let's look at the original cause. Yeah. So the original cause is too much stress. Yeah. And that can be environmental stress, right? That can be systemic stress. If you're an indigenous person, a black person, if you're living in the US right now and you're a minority, then you are in a constant state of stress. Yeah. I was talking to a black friend of mine down there, and she said, people don't even want to leave their homes. That's how scared they are. Yeah. And I mean, and they're citizens and they're not, they're not recent immigrants. And so we just got too much stress. So it can be environmental that way, where we can be very concerned about climate change. Our immediate environment, like in the summer, we have our fire season these days, and that's very stressful. So we've got environmental stress, we've got psychological stress, our work, our family, our partner, our children, our friends, all of the problems that everyone has, that causes stress for us. And of course, psychological stress, how we were brought up, the values that we have, the beliefs that we have, the personality that we have. If I was a really, really shy person and I was doing this, my heart rate would be right now. Yeah. So, so stress, like stress on that level. Dietary stress, if we're eating too much of the wrong thing at the wrong times, then the body doesn't have a chance to clear that glucose and that insulin out of the nervous system or out of the circulatory system. So it's always going around and around and around. Um, Other factors include the health of our gut biome. So we have a very um, critical balance of good bacteria and bad bacteria, and we want the good bacteria to be more and the bad bacteria to be less. But all of those things, stress, a poor night of sleep. Um, I read some statistic that one night of poor sleep can uh, can change insulin absorption by like 25% or something like that. So we have such a fine balance in all of our systems. And I mean, this whole talk could be on stress. Every single system in your body is affected by chronic stress. Every single system, your circulatory system, your nervous system, your digestion, your muscles, it's all, everything is affected. So let's see, what do I want to say? I think I want to, yeah, okay, I think I'll stop there. Um, oh, no, there's one other thing I wanted to say. So all of those stress factors, it's like they're the spark. And then there's the flame. So it's blowing on the flames. And the flames are hyperinsulinemia, so way too much insulin floating around in the body, um, gut dysbiosis, right? So that chronic, well, inflammation is the second one really. And then gut dysbiosis, so the inflammation in the gut creates too big of an opening in the gut lining, and the things that shouldn't be floating around in the system are floating around. The toxins that should have been contained and excreted, they're leaking out. So that's leaky gut syndrome, and I'm sure that you've had people talk about that. And then the fourth one is poor cellular signaling. So they all interweave. So inflammation, gut dysbiosis, hyperinsulinemia, and cellular signaling. So when we don't get the proper signals in the cells to produce the right proteins, the right hormones, the right chemicals, then nothing is going to work very well. And then we end up with the metabolic symptoms. And it could and what there's this guy Bickman who wrote a whole book on it, and he's I think he might have even coined the phrase hyperinsulinemia. But one of the things that he said is that we test glucose levels, but really elevated insulin levels can be happening for 10 to 15 years before it'll show up as elevated glucose. So that really it's insulin levels in the blood that should be measured, because that would be like a precursor to showing higher insulin or higher glucose levels. Okay, so let's move on to the yoga part of it. So metabolic syndrome and metabolic, I'll call it disease. It doesn't, there's a range of conditions, right? We can start by feeling tired in the afternoons, or we have gas and bloating, or it can start like that, and it can end up with metabolic syndrome. And that can be any of those things that I've listed, and I forgot to list fatty liver disease, but that's one of them too. So all of these things that we think are different things, they're not really different things. They're insulin related. And one of the things that Bickman talks about in his book is that most people think of insulin having to do with blood sugar, but it's actually a master metabolic regulator, because it has an effect on all of those different systems. Our blood pressure, because insulin helps to regulate our fluid balance, our salt and water balance, the production of sex hormones, um, yeah, certainly, inflammation. So all of these different systems are affected by insulin, and we don't really think of insulin as having that kind of broad effect on our mind even. So the insulin can affect the neural signaling in our brain, right? And so that's going to affect how we are in the world, in our in our mind, how we perceive, how we respond, yeah, how anxious we are, how depressed we are. So all of those things. So what I want to say about the yogic aspect is that, going back to the koshas, because metabolic health is a multidimensional condition, it needs to be approached in a multidimensional way. Yeah? And that's where yoga excels, because yoga sees you as a whole person with all of these different aspects. They're called koshas. Kosha means covering or sheath, and the concept of koshas is that we are a soul. We are that um, bit of divinity that is covered in 5 different layers. And each layer is denser than, than the previous layers. So the layer closest to that soul flame is a very, very fine layer. The body is the densest. We can feel it, right? So that layer, and I won't go into the Sanskrit names, the physical layer is where the metabolic markers live, right? That's your blood sugar levels. That's your blood pressure. That's your digestive upset. So this layer, the physical layer, is our physical structure. Yeah, our bones, our muscles, our organs, all of that. And each of the koshas uh, has a way of being fed, right? So we feed the physical layer with good food, not too much, right? And we could say mostly plant-based, right? Adequate levels of nutrients, and movement, right? We feed our physical body with movement. And these days, there's so much research showing that bones produce hormones, muscles produce hormones. And if we're not moving, then that's not happening. And that those hormones, again, are affecting every single system in our body. We wouldn't think that our bones have anything to do with our mind, but they do, right? And same thing with our muscles. So moving is a huge, huge, huge piece of this. The second layer is our energy layer, so our pranic layer. So prana is our life force energy. You can call it chi, but it's what animates us. It's what animates the structure. If it's not there, then we're not alive. And it animates our structure and it moves things. So the prana moves things. So it moves the blood, it moves the food through the digestive system, it moves our thoughts, it moves our emotions, it moves our body, it moves our breath. And so and it moves all our neural impulses. Everything in the body is moved by prana. That's the yogic concept. And so, and it's all tied to the breath, right? So when we're breathing well, then our prana is high, our pranic levels are higher. We're able to move, we have bright eyes, we have a sharp mind, we're happy. And when our pranic levels go down, and a lot of the causes of metabolic disease cause our prana to go down if we're eating crappy food, if we're watching scary movies or listening to really loud music, or we're always being bombarded, then that's going to decrease our energy levels. Yeah. And so on this level, we really want to use the breath. And the breath is really the key to changing a lot of things. And so we'll spend some time with that. So at this very basic level, the breath is what links all of the other layers. Yeah. We can use the breath to speed up our metabolism. We can use our breath to slow it down. We can use our breath to get us to sleep. We can use our breath to give us more energy, more alertness, to calm us down. So it's a master key. Yeah. So then the third layer is our lower mind. We call it Manamaya Kosha. And so this is the part that receives sensory information from our body. and then it passes it to the next layer. Um, and it receives thoughts from the next layer. And so this is where um, we have thoughts, we have emotions. So this is all in this layer. Yeah. And on a on a metabolic level, what we want to do, and stress. So stress really hits this layer too. And I should say that when we have too much sensory stimulation, then that's a stress for the body. So if we're always listening to a podcast, if we've always got something going on, if we're talking a lot, if we're not giving ourselves an opportunity for those stress levels or for those sensory levels to decrease, to quiet, then our nervous system is always going to be on alert. Yeah. So on this level, we want to calm our emotions, and we do that with breath. We do that with mindful movement, slow, mindful, aware movement. So we'll do a little bit of that. I'm coming to the end of my half hour, so I won't talk too much longer. Um, the next layer is more refined, and this is the layer we call it the wisdom mind. Yeah. So this is the layer where you can witness what's happening without judgment. You can see what's going on. You can see, oh, well, that's bullshit and that's not, right? So it's a level of discernment that you've got, a level of wisdom. Um, uh, it's also our personality and our beliefs and all of that. So that's one, and our ego. So that's on one side. And then on the other side is what we call buddhi mind, or that discriminative wisdom. So we can look at what we're doing in terms of our habits in our life, and realize, oh, when I eat late at night, that's interfering with my sleep, and that's going to affect my metabolism, my metabolic health. So we start to be able to name our habits without judgment, right? Oh, isn't that interesting? Gee, I've been doing that for 10 years now, right? Or whatever, but without judgment, and then make a decision, an informed decision to do something different, and then to mother ourselves with that, right? To guide ourselves. Oh, gee, I fell off, I fell off the wagon last night, but um, I know that I have the resources to get back on the wagon. So that's our wisdom mind. And we feed the wisdom mind with with meditation, with reading spiritual books, um, with doing, yeah, that kind of thing. And also nature is a big part of this. So nature is a part of coming to that quiet place in ourselves on this level. It's also on the mental level, mental emotional level. It can calm our emotions. And on the pranic level, when we get the prana from nature, then it's going to calm our nervous system. Yeah. So nature can be a really big part of metabolic health. Then the most refined layer, the layer that's closest to the soul flame, is called the body of bliss, or the body of joy. And this is the part of us that can have access to flow states, to feeling at one with with nature, with something that is greater than ourselves, and a sense of being okay in yourself, like just a general sense of okayness, and um, and the ability to find that stillness within yourself. Yeah, that still, quiet place where you can connect with your deepest self. And we feed this layer with gratitude practice, again with prayer and meditation, doing seva, doing service for others can also refine this layer. And so those are all So each aspect has different ways of feeding it. And so we might not think that, gee, my metabolic health might change if I volunteered at a soup kitchen, 1 day a week, but it can. Yeah, and that's the value of working with a yoga therapist, because that person then will get a lot of information about you and then be able to figure out, well, where's the best place to start? Because it's not always food and it's not always exercise, because sometimes that's just too hard to do, right? I can't, I don't have time. I'm too locked in my habit, my kids, my partner, whatever it is. And so when we can start doing small things, 1 to 3 minutes in the day, then that's what starts changing things. And that 1 to 3 minutes can calm your nervous system down. It can shift how you're digesting. Yeah. So I hope that sounds interesting. So let's get started. Oh, actually, there's just one more piece I wanted to say here. So when we work with yoga in terms of metabolic health, we're working in 4 different areas. So the first, we're down regulating the nervous system. So that's going to decrease cortisol levels. Yeah, so that's number one, and we can do that with breath. We can do that with mindful movement. Second thing is we want to increase the uptake of glucose through the large muscles. So that means we're going to do some active practice, and it could be here's where resistance training, weights, walking, any kind of weight bearing exercise is going to increase the uptake of glucose into your muscles. Yeah. So then the third piece is, because all of those organs are in this part of our body, we want to stimulate this part of our body. Yeah. The organs, if they're not, so the organs are designed to slip and slide over each other. Yeah. They have a mucousy covering on them that helps them to do that. And when you're sedentary, sometimes they get adhered to each other and they're not moving well. So when you're consciously doing forward bends and back bends and side bends and twists and moving those organs, then that can make a difference to the function of the organs. Yeah. This when Darcy and Chris first asked me to do this on this topic, I got really excited about it, and I did a whole lot of research, and I ended up doing a whole 11-week semester this spring on metabolic health. So we're going very deeply into all of the organs and getting a felt sense of the organs and moving from the organs. And I'm just amazed at some of the changes that people are articulating now. It's week 8. And so I thank Darcy and Chris for giving me this topic to play with. Okay, so that's the third thing. So we want, and core work. So core work is also going to uh, stimulate this part of the body. And then the fourth piece from a yogic perspective is deep, deep restoration, nervous system restoration. And that can be the nature. That can be doing yoga nidra, which is a whole relaxation thing. We'll do a little bit of that. But it can be as simple as pausing at the end of an exhalation and just, there's nothing else in the world for that moment. Yeah. And we just don't get enough of that in our society right now. Our lives are just too busy, too crazy. And if we're not out there in the world, then we're on our phones, or we're watching television, or we're talking or whatever. And then we're supposed to just drop and go to sleep. It doesn't really work that way. Okay, so let us do a little practice. I want to leave a little bit of time at the end for questions. So you will need a chair, and I'll show this work uh, in a chair and some things standing, but you don't have to get out of your chair if that's not in the works for you today. Okay, so I'm just going to get my chair. I don't want my ball to come into view again. I sit on an exercise ball. Okay, so in your chair, if you could, instead of sitting back in your chair and relaxing, come forward so that you're not touching the back of your chair. And if your feet don't comfortably touch the floor, then you might want to put a cushion or a folded blanket or something underneath. And there's been a lot of talking, and so let's just down-regulate the nervous system to start, to arrive. So if you could look at something that is directly in front of you at eye level, or just mark it on the wall. And then at that level, turn your head and slowly look around the room. I like to imagine there's a little spider going all around the room at that level. Just noticing in a diffused kind of way what's in the room. And then when you get over your shoulder, then slowly coming back. And then around to the other side. Same little spider crawling around the wall. And then coming back. And if you're in a soft chair, you're not going to be able to feel as much, but that's okay. So first we want to be in our bodies, right? Most of us live in our heads. And so the first step in metabolic health is, well, let's just inhabit our bodies in a more presence kind of way. So let's start by feeling your sitting bones on the chair. And your sitting bones are they're shaped like little feet, and we call them the feet of the pelvis. So you're sitting on your little pelvic feet and noticing how you're sitting. So some people roll back a little bit, some people are perched forward. So play a little bit rolling toward the back of the sitting bones and then rolling toward the front of the sitting bones. I'll do this sideways. So rolling back on the sitting bones, rolling forward on the sitting bones. And noticing where you're spot on, where you're balanced. And go slowly enough so that you can sense, oh, there's the place. And then you go through to the other end. And then find that place where you're perched on your sitting bones. And when you're perched on your sitting bones, then your pelvis is going to be in a fairly aligned position, and your spine should feel like it's easily erect, and your shoulders can let go because you don't have to hold yourself up. And then turning your awareness to your feet and noticing how your feet are meeting the ground. And is there more weight on on the inside or the outside, or more on the toes or on the heels? and feeling the surface underneath your feet. So noticing the flatness of it, the hardness of it, the texture of the carpet or the floor or your mat, whatever you're on, the temperature of it. And then shift perspective, so now you're feeling inside your feet and for where the weight is. Is it same right to left, or is it different? And noticing, doing a scan of your body and noticing, are there areas that feel good, that feel comfortable and at ease? Are there any areas of tension? So we'll go through the different koshas as a way of arriving. So then turning your attention now to your breath and simply witnessing your breath, following it as it flows in the nostrils and out the nostrils. And noticing two different places in your body that you can feel the breath movement. And asking yourself, how do I know that I'm breathing in? What are the sensory signature? What's the sensory signature of that? What are the sensations of you breathing in? And the sensations of you breathing out. How do you know that you're breathing out? And then using your breath, focusing on the exhalation phase of the breath. And as you exhale, get a sense of your body settling. Your body settling into your feet, into your pelvis. So as you exhale, any tension in your jaw can soften, any tension in your shoulders can soften. And then noticing the emotional tone that you're carrying right now. You may have been experiencing some emotions today or over the past little while, and maybe they've left a bit of a hangover. So just noticing that, and they may be fabulous emotions. You may have been very happy lately. So just noticing that. So what we're doing is we're taking you out of your mind and into your body, and your body can only exist in present time, right? Your mind can go all over the place, but your body is in present time. So when you put your mind in your body, then you become more present. Yeah. And when you're more present, then you notice more. Yeah. You're not going to eat a bag of cookies if you're present. Unless you really enjoy each one of those cookies. So then turning your awareness to your mind and noticing the quality of your mind and what are the kinds of thoughts that have been going through there. Is there calmness? Is there anxiety? Is your mind sharp or dull, or heavy, light, scattered, laser? And then asking yourself this question, how connected have I felt to myself lately? Have I been checking in? Have I been listening to the messages? How's my self-talk been? So just noticing, no judgment. How connected have I felt to others? How connected have I felt to something that's greater than myself? Okay, and then starting to extend your exhalation a little. So noticing, just take a few normal breaths and notice what's the relationship of the length of the inhalation to the length of the exhalation. So if you were to count your inhalation and count your exhalation, what would that be? So in an optimal breath, the exhalation would be a bit longer than the inhalation. So if you had a 2-3 count, for example, then keep the inhalation the same, but extend your exhalation by 1 count. And a nice easy breath. You don't want to feel like you're pushing your exhalation out or that you're gasping in the inhalation, pulling it in. Nice and easy, flowing in, flowing out. And if you feel any air hunger, then back off and do a few of your regular breaths, whatever that is, and then come back in. So if 1 count feels doable and easy, then try extending your exhalation by 2 counts now. And noticing the sensations of that. So if it feels uncomfortable, then that's a signal to back off. If it feels okay, then try 3 counts. So the extended exhalation of the breath is going to accomplish the first goal, which is down-regulate the sympathetic nervous system, take you more into your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest, digest, and learn and connect part. So extending your exhalation is taking you there. And this is something you can do anytime. You can do it when you're driving, you can do it when you're cooking, you can do it when you're walking. You can do it when you feel your emotions ramping up. Just extend your exhalation. So if that's felt okay, then see how long you can extend your exhalation comfortably. Without feeling like you have to gasp for breath. So you probably feel like the exhalation kind of runs out and then you're just resting in a pause. And that's actually where we want to be. Yeah, so after your exhalation runs out, you just rest in that pause for as long as it feels okay. And then the inhalation naturally arises on its own in an easy way. So if you have to gasp, then you've stayed in the pause, or you've exhaled probably longer than your body wants. And name that the pause, right? Exhale and then the pause. And it's like a respite place, or a refuge, that pause. A refuge for in your nervous system. And it also starts to change the ratio of oxygen and carbon dioxide in your blood to a place that your brain likes. And if you have twitchy muscles, then this extended exhalation and changing that ratio can decrease the excitability of your muscles even. Okay, so letting that go, but knowing that this is a tool you can put in your toolkit, in your metabolic health toolkit, and you can do it anytime, yeah? And knowing that the breath is going to downregulate your sympathetic nervous system, bring your parasympathetic nervous system up, and that's going to have an effect on your inflammation, on your insulin receptivity, and all of that. Yeah, calm your gut down, all of that. So breath is really powerful. So we'll stay with the breath for a little bit. And one of the best ways that I know to extend the breath in a really easy way is to hum. Yeah? And the humming, there in yoga, there is a humming bee breath called Brahmari breath. It's actually the humming bee breath. And there's been, again, lots of research on it, and it can downregulate your emotions, and it's given to people with anxiety and depression and insomnia. So if you don't, if you're alone, you might not want to do this if there's other people in the room, unless they're really like, people that are okay with you humming. But it's very simple. The first step of it is just, as you exhale, hum. And if you want to add another layer, then you can plug your ears as you hum, and that will take the vibration into a different place. So if you'd like, you can plug your ears, take a nice easy inhalation, and then exhale and as long as you can, and then just keep doing that. We'll do it for just maybe 2 minutes, yeah? You can play with different tones, different loud, different volumes. and always a nice, easy inhalation. Two more breaths. And when you finish, just remain in stillness and notice your breath, notice the quality of your mind. And whether anything shifted for you. Okay, so when we're balancing the nervous system, breath is one way, and slow mindful movement is another way. And so we'll do a little bit of that now. We'll do it sitting. So still on the edge of your chair, and we'll combine the movement with the breath. So as you inhale, raising your arms up slowly, just to whatever level feels okay. For some people it might be here, for some people it might be here, for some people it might be go all the way up, there might be a little arch. And then as you exhale, slowly coming down. And as you're doing that, you're very curious about the movement of your hands through the air and the feeling of your arms connected to your body and what happens in your spine as your arms raise up. Does this feel good? If it doesn't feel good, then find another way. Do it lower amplitude or don't do it. Feeling the air on the skin. Feeling the gravitational pull, the weight of your arms. And one more time. And then resting. So this concept of pause that I've introduced to you is a way that you can find that restoration throughout your day. And what I mean by that is taking a pause between things. So before you jump out of bed in the morning, taking a pause, doing 3 mindful breaths, or doing a little bit of movement in bed. That's your pause before you get up and start doing your day. Or when you ask to doing something else, take that pause. If you're a working person, then when you go to the toilet, then take, 30 minutes and do some breath or focus on your feet or something. So this concept of pause is something that can help you down-regulate your nervous system throughout the day. So instead of getting ramped up, it gets ramped up, and then you have a little pause and it comes down a bit, and then it gets ramped up and you have a little pause and you come down again. So any of this stuff, the breath, the movement. So let's do another movement. This is one of the basic movements in yoga called cat-cow, and you can do it sitting, standing, on all fours. and it involves the sitting bone. So as you inhale, you roll forward on your sitting bones so that your back arches just gently, and you still want to be able to look at the floor, so you don't want to be crunching the back of your neck. And then as you exhale, you roll toward the back of the sitting bones and you're rounding your back. And that's going to be compressing all of the digestive organs. So as you go forward and back, you're giving them a little tensioning, and then you're giving them a little compression. And it's mindful, so you're feeling the movement on your sitting bones. Changes shape. You're feeling how the breath supports the movement. As you exhale, there's a collapse and a rounding. As you inhale, there's an expansion. If you want, you can add your arms so that as you inhale, arms come up and you're tensioning on all of those organs a little bit more. As you exhale, arms come down and you're getting that compression. And one more. Okay, so here we want, when you're done, just because that's going to move some prana. Yeah? Okay, so second movement, we want to do it mindfully with the breath and compress and tension the organs. So if you take one hand onto your ribs, let's say left hand onto the ribs, right hand hanging down alongside you. On an inhalation, breathe into the ribs like you're inflating them and then coming into a side bend on the other side. And exhaling as you come up. We'll do it both ways. We'll inhale down, so really expanding into the ribs. The organs will be compressed on one side and tensioned on the other. So in your own breath rhythm, it may be different than mine. Do more on an inhalation. And up on the exhalation. So as you inhale, your diaphragm goes down and compresses all of those organs. As you exhale, your diaphragm comes up and leaves a little more space. Let's do that to the other side. So inhaling into the ribs, tipping sideways. Exhaling, coming up. And tracking the movement, so tracking the sensations. And always, is it comfortable, is it not comfortable? And if it's not comfortable, then maybe don't go so far or do it less. Okay, so when you've done 3, now we're going to change the breath. Yeah? So first we were inhaling and moving, and now we'll be exhaling and moving. So hands on the hand on the left side, taking an inhalation, inflating those left ribs. And then as you exhale, tipping over to the right. Now there's a little more room in the abdomen, and then inhaling and coming up. So 3 times. and always pause between the sides just to give the nervous system a chance to figure out what's happened with that side. So when you're ready, hand on the right ribs, taking an inhalation. 3 times. Okay, so if you're an office person, you're sitting a lot, then you could do this standing. Yeah, this could be your 1 to 3 minute break. Yeah, even just doing three on each side is going to change the game. Yeah. So let's take that into a let's just leave it there because I want to move on. I want to leave time for questions. So that's down regulating the nervous system. That's working this area of the body with compression, decompression. And now let's do some muscular work. So if it's okay for you to stand, then please come to standing. Otherwise, you can stay in the chair and I'll show you in the chair. Well, actually, this is called chair pose, but I'm going to turn my chair sideways so you can see. So chair pose existed before there were squats that you do in the gym. So in chair pose, what we want to do is take your hands in prayer position in front. Feel your feet on the ground, especially the heels. And you want to keep some weight in your heels as you come down into a semi-squat. So the invitation is to very, very slowly send your sitting bones back toward the chair as though you're going to sit. When you're as far as is comfortable, then pressing through your feet, sending that force up through your legs so that you come to uprightness. And that's one chair pose, one dynamic chair pose. So some people like to exhale as they come down, and other people like to inhale as they come down. So do both, but take the full inhalation and the full exhalation to do the movement. And really using the muscles of your legs to slowly lower down, so you're preventing yourself from falling into the floor. You're putting the brakes on. That's using the muscles. Then when you press into the ground and send the force up through the legs, then that's using the muscles. And as you're using the muscles, there's lots of glucose going into the cells. And last time, make this really, really slow. And if you want, you can stay down for a breath or two. That's going to use even more muscular effort. You probably feel it in your quadriceps muscles. Otherwise, just keep going up and down a couple of times. And when you've had enough, pressing through your feet, pressing through your heels to come back up. Okay, so come to stand behind your chair. And we'll use the the calf muscles now. So coming up on your toes on an inhalation, staying up for a moment, and then slowly, slowly, slowly lowering down. And do that a few times with your own breath rhythm, slowly, slowly, slowly coming up. And feeling all the sensations of that movement. And last time. Okay, and then coming back to your chair. And now you can arrange yourself in your chair to be really comfortable, because this last few minutes of practice, we'll do a body scan, which is the deep restoration part of the 4 steps that we want to cover in yoga for metabolic health. So find your sitting bones again, feet flat on the floor. If it's comfortable for you, you can close your eyes or turn your gaze downward towards your knees or to the floor. And noticing your body and your breath and what feels different than when you started. So I will lead you through a circulation of your awareness through your body. And uh, if you like, you can in your mind say the body part. I'll say a body part in your mind if you want to say it. And then send your awareness to that part with some kindness, like you're saying hello to that part of you, maybe giving it some gratitude. Yeah. So placing your attention on your right hand thumb, index finger, middle finger, ring finger, baby finger, palm, back of the hand, wrist, forearm, elbow, upper arm, right shoulder, side of the waist, right hip, thigh, knee, shin, ankle, heel, sole, top of the foot, big toe, second toe, third toe, fourth toe, fifth toe, over to the left hand thumb, index finger, middle finger, ring finger, baby finger, palm, back of the hand, wrist, forearm, elbow, upper arm, shoulder, left side of the waist, hip, thigh, kneecap, shin, ankle, heel, sole, top of the foot, left big toe, second toe, third toe, fourth toe, fifth toe, both heels, both sitting bones, the spine, the shoulder blades, the back of the neck, the top of the head, right eye, left eye, left ear, nose, upper lip, lower lip, teeth, tongue, jaw, chin, throat, right of the chest, left side of the chest, center of the chest, abdomen, pelvis, the whole right side of the body, the whole left side of the body, the front half of the body, the back half of the body, and the whole body, all the parts simultaneously, the whole body. So taking this moment to feel hopefully a little bit of quiet and peace inside of yourself, and to remember that you can find this yourself. You can orchestrate this feeling, which is a nervous system that is more regulated. So that is the talk and the practice. And if you have any questions, I think we still have a couple minutes left. If there are questions. So
Like,
Chris, you're monitoring questions?
yeah,
Or
I had a few questions. I mean, thank you so much, Leela. That was amazing. I feel like we've been so humbled and so grateful to have some incredible speakers in my brief tenure. No slight against them. That was definitely like one of my favorites. Is one of the best ones. Thank you so much, Leela.
you're very welcome.
Yeah, we have a couple questions and just maybe I'll reflect on a couple things. And yeah, that was so amazing kind of walking through that. And it was great to kind of maybe have a synopsis or better understanding of kind of the science behind certain things before we went into actual application and movement. And that was really interesting with kind of the sitting in the pelvic bones. When we started that, I like immediately kind of felt my body kind of
Mhm.
thank me, be like, oh, I hadn't done that in such a long time, maybe even ever. And that was a nice little shift. And I imagine even little things like that can make a difference
Absolutely, throughout the day. Yeah.
throughout the day. And yeah, there was a few things that really kind of spoke to me. Um, I think one thing and kind of drawing on my background, and maybe I'll share a little bit more of that towards the end. But yeah, I went to school for dietetics, but I uh, sort of all of my electives were in counseling psych, and so I always kind of think back to some of my clients and people that I've spoken to, and I think one thing that you said that really kind of stood out to me was taking this time for that mindfulness or mindful movement between things. And I thought that was really interesting and really could be an incredible application because I think a lot of the people I used to work with that maybe struggled with ADHD or even around obsessiveness or OCD. I think one thing that I had noticed in my very brief time was sort of this need for delayed gratification. And I think our society really does continue to promote that, this need to complete something in order to feel value or feel worthy to celebrate. And I think people, the clients I would work with really struggled with celebrating things or really being present. And so I think having that slight shift of taking this time to be mindful be in between things opposed to when something's completed, I think that could really make a big difference for a lot of people and even personally.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Really interesting. Okay, so we have a couple questions, and I did have a couple questions afterwards. I just wanted to check in. You're okay time wise if we
Yeah.
another 5 minutes or so. Okay. Okay, so we had one question here from Vivian. How well does somatic yoga work for increasing metabolism and reducing inflammation? I continue seeing social media posts about weight loss from somatic yoga.
You know, I could get on my soapbox about this because somatic is being thrown around all over the place.
Mhm,
And what somatic means is that just what I said about the koshas, it's a lived experience in your body that involves all of you.
mhm,
And so when people say somatic yoga, a lot of times they're just talking about, well, paying attention, being like mindful movement. And it's not just that. It's how you're breathing, what's going on in your mind, what are you feeling in your emotions, it's all of that, all of those different layers. What's your conditioning, what are the thoughts that are coming, what belief systems are you coming up against when you do stuff. So that's somatic. That's what somatic is. And so it's a buzzword out there, and so you do have to be really careful. And
mhm,
uh, the promises are, I think, quite far-fetched,
mhm,
because any downregulation of your nervous system, any decrease in inflammation, any weight loss takes a multi-dimensional program. And
mhm,
it's not just what they call somatic yoga that will do that. So, I mean, it can help in all the ways. When your nervous system is more regulated, then you make better choices. When you pay attention to what's going on inside your body in terms of interoception, like what's going on inside, then that actually creates a process in your nervous system that ends up with you able to make better decisions and to self-regulate in a better way. So in that sense, yes, but it's not always taught that way. Yeah. So I hope that
Well, very
answers.
interesting. That's helpful, and definitely we'll kind of share some potential resources and Leela's website at the end. And I certainly encourage everyone to kind of reach out to Leela if you're interested. I think we all get the sense that we're really kind of scratching the surface on this one, and I'm sure Leela might be able to kind of sort of answer some more poignant and sort of specific questions. I did have a couple questions though. You've kind of already touched on this and alluded to it. Something that we certainly get from a number of our customers and seminar goers and clients at Choices has to do with anti-inflammation. I'm curious, what your experience has been around yoga and mindfulness and metabolic health in relation to inflammation, chronic or acute.
Yeah, yeah, there's lots of good research with all of those things in the yoga toolkit
Mhm,
and in inflammation levels, because the inflammation is driven by stress. It's driven by gut dysbiosis. It's driven by, well, when the fat cells get too big because they're insulin resistant, and then they get too big and they start producing fatty acids, which then travel to other places and inflame. And so all of the metabolic markers can be helped with yoga, and inflammation is definitely one of them.
mhm,
And there's good research that's come out not that long ago showing that that blood sugar levels
mhm,
are are significantly decreasing with those practices, with the breath practices, with the mindful movement practices, with the everything we did, using the big muscles, and then working some core. then all of those things are going to help decrease inflammation for sure. Yeah. And it's research backed.
Yeah, thank you. That definitely kind of ties those loose ends. Question here. What role does consistency versus intensity play when it comes to yoga or metabolic improvements?
Oh, it's the consistency. It's definitely the consistency. You do not have to be intense to get value and to get
Mm-hmm.
results. I would, it's just like we say, if you do a 2 hour yoga practice once a week, it's not as good as doing 10 minutes a day or 20 minutes a day. And
Mm-hmm.
that can be broken up 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at lunch, whatever. It's definitely the consistency and it's the little bits. And I hope that I've introduced you to some little bits today.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, you're going to keep down regulating yourself throughout the day. And that's what decreases all of the drivers of inflammation, gut dysbiosis, poor cellular signaling, and all of those metabolic things. Yeah. So definitely consistency. And by consistent, I mean 5 out of 7 days would be a regular practice. And it doesn't have to be a big deal practice. Like many of my students break it up throughout the day. But by the end of the day, they've done half an hour practice.
A
Yeah.
great idea.
Yeah. And you can, like I say, you can do some of these things while you're driving or while you're walking or,
Mhm.
you're moving from one room in the house or in the office to the other. You can be aware of your feet on the ground. You can, feel your body moving. All of those things count. But it's that discriminative wisdom that invites us to notice,
Mhm.
to change the habit, to institute something else, and to pat ourselves on the back when we do a good job, and
Mhm.
to pull ourselves up when we go back to our old habit, which we always do under stress.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And no, I definitely appreciate how I think you focused on the fundamentals and the foundation. I myself, I'm trying to get more into yoga and whatnot, really due to my partner, and I understand really the physical benefits and scientific benefits. Um, are there any specific types or styles of yoga that you find are particularly beneficial for beginners or just for people in general?
Well, any I make it a point wherever I go traveling to go to beginners classes, and I'm
Mhm.
really shocked at what some people call beginners classes,
Mhm.
because it does start with foundation. And for me, because I come from a somatic background, a movement therapy background, I always direct people to classes where I know that the teacher works that way, because so many yoga classes are ending up hurting people because it's too much too fast, there's not enough good instruction. And so
Mhm.
you want to make sure you go to a yoga teacher who is experienced, who has some good experience, and who doesn't just do the practice at the front of the room, but who walks
Mhm.
around and notices what people are doing. Yeah.
Mhm. Well, that's definitely helpful. Okay, thank you, Leela. There's another question in the chat from Beverly. Is there anywhere we can see this practice that we just did? Anywhere on any site?
Yeah, well, it will be on the Choices YouTube channel. It'll also be
Mhm.
on my YouTube channel. And I have lots of practices on my YouTube
Mhm.
channel. And yeah, I'm quite active these days on social media, on Instagram and Facebook. And I do a lot of educational stuff on on
Mhm.
those on those. Yeah, so there's lots of practices. Yeah, and other choices talks that I've
Yeah,
done. Yeah.
absolutely.
On the nervous system, on digestion,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah,
Definitely. No, thank you, Leela.
and if you're, I was saying to Chris that if I have a handout, if people are interested, you can connect with me through my website, and I'll send you the handout. And I'm in White Rock. if people are local, then I do one in-person class a week, and then all the others are online, and I have people all over the world. So if you're interested in this kind of work, then we'll be starting up again in September, another 11-week semester.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Leila. Those are great resources. And right after the Q&A, I'll show everyone the website. You can kind of contact Leila, and you can certainly reach out to any of the Choices nutrition team members, and we would be happy to pass on your questions or information to Leila as well. Just the last couple of questions we love to ask all of our guests, maybe kind of going a little bit more sort of macro level. What first sparked your interest in yoga and metabolic health, and how did that kind of come together?
Well, I got into yoga because I hurt my back. That was
Mm,
many, many decades ago. And I just found that it improved everything. It improved my sleep, it improved my digestion, all of those things. And I was also really sick with chronic fatigue for 15 years and with systemic inflammatory arthritis. Like I was really, really sick for a long time. And it was my yoga practice. And my yoga practice then was, me moving my hands like this because they were so stiff, or putting my hands together. It was so simple because I didn't have any energy, I couldn't kneel or sit or anything like that. So I knew that my practice could help with my pain, could help with my fatigue, could help with all of those things. And like I say, I didn't really think about the metabolic health part of it until you guys asked me to do this. But what I saw is that really yoga promotes metabolic health, period. And you can get very specific with it, but any general yoga practice that involves the movement, the breath, the mindfulness, the meditation, the relaxation, all of that is going to help metabolic health because it down regulates the sympathetic nervous system and decreases cortisol levels. So, yeah,
very cool. Okay.
I'm a
Thank you,
very
Leila.
passionate advocate of yoga.
Yeah, as we should be, and really, I think with the Choices Nutrition team, we always just try to focus on education and
Yeah.
science, and so it's lovely that we got to kind of have our paths cross. I know there was a few people, funny enough, that reached out to me about this webinar, asking about, maybe inquiring about potentially getting into a life of becoming a yoga therapist or things like that. So kind of for them, looking back on your career so far, um, you know, if you could go back in time to talk to yourself when you first started your journey, is there anything you would give advice wise or share with yourself from back then?
Well, that's a great question. I would, I think I did this unconsciously, but it's like go where you're interested. Like
Mm,
really follow your passion and trust that it will take you to the right place. Because when
mm,
I look back, I wrecked my back and that got me into
mm,
yoga and all of these different journeys that I went on um,
mm,
ended up with me in exactly the right place I needed to be. In a
mm,
place where, yeah, I teach people how to take care of themselves. I teach
mm,
teachers to teach
mm,
their students how to take care of
mm.
themselves. And what could be more gratifying than that,
Mm,
right? Yeah. So it's really just trust in your own sense of where you need to be. Like just trust
mm.
that. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that's great. I mean, that's great advice, and I
It'll
think
take you to the right
focusing,
place. It'll take you to the right place.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, focusing on the process, maybe
Yeah.
over the outcome,
Trust the
and doing that.
process.
Trust the process.
Yeah. That's
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 amazing.
that's one of that's those are my I have affirmations, and one of them is I trust myself and I trust my process. And that's come from all of that. I trust my process. Yeah.
That's great. I might steal that for my morning affirmations
Yeah.
too. Okay, well, maybe one last question. Yeah, where do you think the world of yoga or just kind of your field and expertise, where do you think it's headed in the next decade or so?
Well, I think that, and this is really happening in the U.S. more and in the U.K., where yoga therapy is being integrated into the medical system because it's cheap and it works.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it's
Wonderful.
preventative.
Mhm,
So instead of spending all of this money when people are already sick with all of these metabolic uh,
mhm,
conditions, it's so preventable
mhm,
by bringing a yoga practice. I mean, yeah, it's the big health organizations in the States and the hospitals are hiring yoga therapists because they see that people with addiction, people with pain, people with arthritis, people with digestive issues, people with cardiovascular disease, when they learn all of these things, then their conditions improve. Yeah. So I think that's where it's going. And especially as money gets tighter and tighter and tighter, the medical system has to move toward, it just has to,
mhm.
because otherwise spending what 90% of the money in somebody's last 10 years of life, something like that. I mean, it's crazy. Or even the last year of life. Yeah. So let's increase our health span, not just our lifespan, but our health span.
That's kind of a great sort of ending point, and I think that that's why you can really see the parallels with your work in nutrition,
Yeah.
is that the simpler it is, the more we can probably go back to basics, the better it's going to be.
Yeah, for
If you
sure.
have to be really in layman's terms. And okay, I'm just going to share our last slide here. Doesn't look like there's any more questions in the chat. Okay, so let's see here. Second. Okay, so this is where you can certainly check out Leela's website. Just here in the contact us, that's where you can reach out to Leela to get that wonderful handout from today. And also maybe just inquire if you have any more questions or if you're curious about her wonderful programs and services. And
And
if you
book.
have any issues,
And
you
book.
can certainly
And book.
reach out to us. Yes?
And book.
And book, yes, and absolutely. I think that's also what we're really happy about. Leela is local. She does offer classes in person and as well online, as she mentioned. Uh, but certainly, I think this could be a really great step in the door for a lot of people, and I strongly encourage you to kind of look into that if this is something that really resonated with you. I think it would certainly be worth diving into a bit more, reaching out to Leela, and seeing how she might be able to support you. Yeah, maybe. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Leela, there.
Yeah, I do private sessions as well. And just to leave you with the idea that whole person problems require whole person healing.
Mhm.
And yeah, and that's what yoga and yoga therapy does. Yeah.
Great. Thank you
It's
so
all
much.
about you. It's all about you as an individual, not a cookie cutter. For diabetes, do this. For cardiovascular disease, do this. It's who you are, and it's directed to who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what I've, certainly really appreciate about Leela's kind of approach to things is that it's about meeting people where they are and understanding that everyone's a bit different. But we're really here to support. What I often tell clients or tell people, when it comes to health, when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to just our overall well-being, you can pay now or pay more later,
Yeah.
because that's kind of the nature of being an animal, a human being. And so, our body does kind of bear the cost of our life and of our past. And it's important that we really maintain that and strengthen those things, right? So maybe that's one last thing I'll share. Is if you're ever interested, the Choices Nutrition team, we're always happy to support. If you sign up for some classes with Leela, regardless of kind of what your situation is, we're always happy to offer our nutrition services. So we do 60-minute to 3 hour long nutrition consultations and follow-ups anytime you like, either in person or over the phone. And I'm sure if this is something that you're interested, we certainly like to develop different nutrition plans or eating plans for people, and we can certainly tailor it along with any of Leela's classes as well. But this is really open to anybody, anytime, and you can certainly reach out to us if you have any questions. And there is a nutritionist available at all 11 of our locations in person. So yeah, with that, I just want to say thank you so much again, Leela. It's been such a
Okay.
pleasure. We look forward to hoping to kind of continue this partnership, and excited to see what's to come.
Okay. All right. And thank you everyone for staying and learning and have fun with it.
Yeah, thank you. Some people were saying, another person here said, Leela's two books are excellent reading with photos and diagrams as well. Lots of thank yous, lots of hearts in the chat. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate your time today.